Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Moon Knight. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I think this episode did a really good job of giving us a little more insight into, obviously, Lila and Mark's marriage, but also giving us more insight into Lila as a person. We learned that she's kind of on her Robin Hood type of thing, because it seems like she has stolen like artifacts and stuff like that, but she's like, let me clarify, they were stolen first, and I make sure they get back to where they rightfully belong. But sometimes to pay the bills, I will like take something, of my own to kind of pay for things. So very, adventure-esque. Which I think this episode, it's so interesting because this episode definitely gives you that like Indiana Jones, at least to me, Indiana Jones almost Uncharted feel to it in some regards. So it definitely, obviously, like a movie of her reference in comparison was like National Treasure. Granted, I've never seen National Treasure, so I can't make that direct correlation, but I definitely get Uncharted vibes, which obviously Uncharted is very, heavily inspired by Indiana Jones. So that's what I ended up kind of correlating. And so Mark is in Egypt, specifically, I think Cairo, and he's in trying to find out where Arthur is, and doing things his normal way of like, right, I'm gonna beat the information out of people. But sadly, Mark, Steven took over at one point in time, was like, cool, sorry guys, I'm gonna let you go. And by the time Mark gets back control, and that makes you wonder how much time ended up disappearing in that time frame. Did he lose like a couple minutes? Enough time for them to be on their way to the airport and to be like, wait, what's going on? Wait, why are they coming out? Steven let them go because he didn't want to take the chance. Because he doesn't want to take the chance that Mark might actually kill them. And Mark doesn't enjoy killing people. I think for him it is a necessity. It's a necessary evil because, right, it's all for the purposes of, everything I'm doing is for the purpose of stopping Arthur from doing what he's doing. And I have to go about any means necessary to make that happen. And, it also stems from Steven learning so much about Mark last episode, about who he is, what he's capable of, that of course he doesn't want to give Mark the opportunity to hurt people, which obviously is frustrating for Mark, because now it's like, cool, when I need to be in control, you are now snatching control away from me. And he talks about it a little bit later on. Something happened to make, he used to be able to keep this under control. Once again, I still am not 100% aware if this is something post-Khonshu or pre-Khonshu. They really haven't clarified that, because they still keep that up in the air, because once again, there was that line from last episode where it was, did Khonshu choose you because your mind would be easily broken, or was your mind already broken and that's why Khonshu chose you? So that's still the number one question about their circumstances. But the moment Mark is trying to pump him for information, he snaps out of it and he's already in the process of killing the other two. So it's like, wait, Steven, what did you do? It's like, I didn't do it. So we are seeing the emergence of another personality. At the very least, there must be such a deep subconscious, a consciousness that's there, personality that's there, that they're not even, the fact is they're not even aware of it is wild. Because obviously Mark and Steven are able to talk to each other, so who is this third personality that's so deep down that they are not even aware of its existence yet? Because it makes you wonder, how long did it take before Mark ended up finding out about Steven's existence? So the fact is he doesn't even immediately say that means it didn't even cross his mind. So he must think oh, I only have Steven. Or is he aware that there might be others, or maybe just they've never presented themselves before? Because he just seemed like he was genuinely caught off guard, because he assumed oh, Steven, what did you do? It's like, no, it wasn't me, I thought it was you. It's like, no. So they're not, I guess with everything going on, they didn't really have time to sit down and talk about it, but I think that's such a fascinating thing of trying to understand how that operates, how Mark's mind works, and Well, because like I feel like a lot of times, I mean, and this is coming from someone who has the very bare minimum understanding of dissociative personality identity disorder, having like the smallest understanding of that, and I don't know how that correlates, like, because I think I'm under the impression and once again, this could be ignorance on my part, I was under the impression a lot of times maybe the other personalities wouldn't be aware of each other's existence. Like Moon Knight seems to be a special case of, yes, they're all aware of each other's existence, but I guess I don't know. It's something I don't know enough about, and I can say that I'm not sure whether Mark's circumstances are within range of someone having dissociative identity disorder, or is it just kind of a special case of, I mean, well, obviously there's a special case of he can directly communicate with his other personalities, through the mirrors and stuff like that because of the special setup of their circumstances, but like the fact that him not knowing another personality emerged, I feel like that is something that most time you wouldn't be aware. I mean, that most personality disorder situations, they wouldn't be aware of each other. But once again, that's ignorance on my part of not knowing fully how that whole thing works. But I also thought this episode did a good job, too, of also showing, like, Mark can go balls to the wall, violent, deadly killer if he needs to be, because it's somewhere inside of him. And the argument could be, that's why Khonshu also chose you, because yes, you're bendable to his will, but also it's because Khonshu probably saw a lot of himself in Mark. It's like, right, you're a dastardly evil person, well, let's use a lot of that evil to root out other evil and be my fist of vengeance. You're a killer, and you're kind of the right person for the job in this regard. So, but he still ended up having hesitation, especially when it came to the youngest one, because that's why, like, partway through the fight, he just, like, instead of punching, he, like, opened his palm, and this time, like, Khonshu's like, right, dangle the kid over the edge. It's like, no, but it's just a kid. It's like, do it, they'll talk, and they don't. They believe so wholeheartedly in this mission that they're willing to die for it without giving him any information, so, and it's not what Mark wanted, but regardless, he doesn't wallow on it. It's like, whatever, it is what it is. And he just kind of moves on. And so it shows that it's there inside of him, but he buries a lot of that compassion down because, right, I have a job to do. We have to kind of basically save the world. But also at the same time, it's a selfish reason of, once I'm done with this, Khonshu will leave me alone and I won't have to worry about Lila. There's still the thing of, well, Khonshu made it clear that if you part ways, he'll go after Lila. So even more reason to get this done. But then Khonshu does this thing of doing what he does and makes, like, the moon shine, like he starts affecting the sky. And I guess despite everything, his powers are still limited. Because I guess, like, to really fully activate your stuff, like, you have to, it seems like you have to act through your avatar. But I wonder, is it just because so much of his power has diminished over the years, the reason why he's not as strong as he would? I mean, he only did all this to get the other gods' attention. So we have the gathering of the other avatars, which was really interesting. Mark is still a newbie in all of this, so he's meeting the other avatars and the gods. And maybe this speaks volumes about Khonshu's circumstances, or maybe it's just Mark's constitution, but whereas the others ended up, like, submitting themselves completely to their respective gods, that they could all talk to Khonshu. Khonshu kept, like, possessing his body to talk through him. So it wasn't a full possession, and I'm wondering, is it because of the way Mark's mind is that it's not amendable to fully letting Khonshu completely control him, or was it just because Khonshu's power is limited? Maybe a combination of the two. So, but trying to warn is like, right, I've gathered all you here because I have to tell you, Arthur Harrow, this man, he's going to try and raise Amit. But Arthur's like, oh, I'm the accused. Well, I'm here. This man, you can't believe him. We're talking about a god who's been banished by you guys. Plus, his avatar isn't well. And it's like, they admit, like, are you unwell? And he's like, yes, but that's beside the point. Arthur is still trying to, just because I'm unwell doesn't make me wrong about what Arthur's up to. And I guess it kind of flows into, you are a cult leader for a reason. You are charismatic enough to make people believe, like, no. Because they already have their judgments about Khonshu. All they needed was someone to, like, charismatic enough to swear, like, to play into their already, like, doubts about Khonshu already. So, especially because I want to say it was Mark played right into Arthur's hands, because he was saying all this stuff about Mark, and Mark ended up trying to punch him, but one of the gods stops him because it's like, right, there's no violence as long as it's going to be here. So they let him go, and they basically caught you a warning. You do anything like that, messing with this guy again, you will suffer. Okay, now we get a little more of an understanding, too, of the beef between Khonshu and the other gods. It turns out that Khonshu feels like the other gods abandoned humanity. So I think in a weird way it is a thing of, he does love humans. I love humans and I want to look after them, where you guys completely abandoned them. But the gods are like, no, humanity abandoned us. We made a whole pact of no interference. We would allow humanity to go down the route that it's going to without... We act through our avatars are meant to serve as, well, our avatars, as our boots on the ground, but they are not meant to be so blatant like you. You are always too noisy. Like, you know, Mark is just full blown out in the streets making too much noise as Moon Knight, I think. And their job as avatars aren't supposed to be that. Like, this whole thing is supposed to be like almost like a invisible observers are basically what they're supposed to be, but Mark takes a much more active role, it seems like, than any other avatar does. But one of the other avatars ends up pointing them in the direction of another sarcophagus of someone named Sinfu, and Sinfu will lead them to where Ahmed is hidden, because even the gods themselves don't know where Ahmed is hidden, but they needed to find they always needed a way to find Ahmed's tomb if they ever decided to show leniency and mercy towards Ahmed. So Sinfu ends up having the only coordinates, so that ends up with Mark and Layla eventually crossing paths, because this is her stomping ground, this is her territory, this is her home, so she knows exactly where to go and where to turn to, which involved a guy named Anton, which, you know, obviously they it pops up in the episode during the credits, but I'm going to butcher the actor's last name, but Gaspar is the actor who played Anton, who sadly passed away, you know. And I believe it was like the day after the official trailer originally dropped. It was like the day after he passed away in a skiing accident, I believe. So I was like, oh man, that sucks. Which, really quickly about Layla, they did reference at the beginning of the episode, I was like, hey, Madripoor. I'm curious considering what Madripoor is, like, from what we've got of it in this universe, that being, you know, what we got of it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I guess it would make sense with what she does, kind of doing the Robin Hood thing when it comes to, like, artifacts and art and stuff like that. It would make sense that that would be a place. The moment that popped up in my, like, the moment they mentioned Madripoor, I was like, does Lila end up having, you know, considering what she does, I was like, does she have any correlation or connections to Sharon? Because we know Sharon has, like, a crap ton of art and stuff like that in her place in Madripoor. So I'm like, I wonder if there's some connection or correlation there. And I think they also, as I brought up earlier, did a really good job of, like, kind of delving a little bit into Lila and Mark's relationship. Obviously, he's apologetic because she's like, why didn't you tell me about everything that was going on? And it seems like he's not the biggest talker. It doesn't seem like he shares a lot. In fact, Lila even talks about it later on. Well, I think Layla says later on that every time she learns something new about Mark, she's like, I figure, like, right, this has got to be the last secret. There's no way there's even more I don't know about you. Did I ever really know you at all? And Mark says no. Because the question is of how much of himself did he ever truly, like, present to her? How much was a lie? How much was true? And, like, and I think that's what strikes such a chord with her, that she does care about Mark, but to find out everything you've been through, like, we had our fun and everything, but for you to not tell me the truth, to push me away, like, I get why you're doing it, you're trying to protect me on some level. She doesn't know all the details about why he does what he does, but it is the thing that he is pushing her away. and now it seems like I don't even really know you at all. Did I? Did I ever really know you? And I think that does a really good job of also playing into a theory that I've heard people say. Like, I picked this up in like one or two podcasts I've listened to that I thought was fascinating, where they reference Steven being what he is. Like when someone points out last episode about how there's that thing. It's like, oh, like the thing that Layla likes. I keep doing that. Sorry. That she likes. It was like. It's like, oh, he's like, this is my favorite author. She's like, no, it's mine. And then like they connected over like the translations and stuff last episode, and we get even more of that this episode, kind of them bonding a little bit. So I'd heard the theory, and I think it's kind of an interesting thing that obviously Steven is a personality of, this is the person Mark wishes he could be. That this is all the people, like the person he wishes he could be for Layla. This is the person she deserves. So like, right, here's a crafted personality that is perfectly fit and tailored to kind of complement her nicely. So I think who this lovable goof is who he wishes he could be, but he's so it's impossible to reinvent himself. He wants to basically, on some subconscious level, he created a version of himself with a clear conscience, because he can't just bury away the past and forget the things he's done. I don't think he wants to ever forget the things he's done, because it's like, will I ever be forgiven for my sins? I don't know. Which I think that's kind of an interesting thing too, like using the word sin specifically, because Arthur references later on what he did being Khonshu's Fist of Vengeance. To him, it's like, right, I enjoyed being that, and that is my greatest sin, that I actually enjoyed it. But we'll circle to that a little bit later on. But focusing back on what I was saying about the whole Layla thing, like you could tell being around Steven, she kind of liked it, and it was just kind of like, oh wow, like, especially when he was putting everything together to lead them to Amit's tomb. I thought that was kind of interesting, because obviously everything around Sinfu's, that's afterwards, but at Sinfu's sarcophagus, everything started popping off when Arthur shows up, and kind of, it's like, yeah, kind of leads them in the wake of everything, trying to make sure that, I guess, maybe he automatically, well, he has the compass, so he already knew where to go. I guess he was just doing everything he could to hamper what Mark could do. So Mark eventually suits up and then starts ripping through people. Well, not ripping through, but we get it like better display of like, what a like the ceremonial uniform is capable of. That obviously it also gives him like the healing properties. It seems like specifically comes from the armor itself. Without the armor, he's just a regular person. Like the armor itself, the suit heals him. But obviously it's bulletproof. I could definitely, like, obviously the comparison that keeps always getting made is like the Batman thing. Is like, oh, when he was leaping through the air like that, you're like, yeah, I could definitely see even more Batman-esque elements right then and there. But he was just kind of cutting through people like it was nothing, throwing his moon batarangs, stabbing people like that. He was just kind of rushing through everyone, and just Steven tried to prevent him from killing any more people, steps in, immediately gets stabbed a couple times. It's like, all right, take the body, Mark. I guess to be fair, and I mean, it's like, right, in this situation, it is a kill or be killed thing. They were going to kill us, so we had no choice but to put them down. So it is kind of a self-defense thing, but I was still kind of surprised. I'm like, man, you just like, no getting around like, oh man, you just injured us. Like, no, you straight up, not unless they try to cover around that. I mean, but it's like, this show out of any is definitely leans more into the whole like, yeah, we're dropping bodies left and right. I feel like Falcon and Winter Soldier, they skirted around that in some regards. This, they're kind of keeping it pretty blatant with just like everything that's happening. It's also interesting, like, how much, he can take being stabbed by all those spears and still trudging along. But Arthur had admitted that he was like, when he was there, he was talking about the real reason why Layla doesn't come back home is because there was earlier aspects in the episode that talked about her dad and everything, and now it seems like her dad was murdered. And the moment that came up, and then he talked about like, right, Mark, you're afraid to tell her the truth because if you do, you're afraid she's going to think of you the same way you think of yourself, which immediately you're like, he murdered her dad, right? Like, whether that was stuff like all those years ago, the people he like zip tied and executed that we learned about last episode, her dad was one of those people, wasn't he? And so that's probably even more what he's scared of. It makes you wonder if that ends up being the case. I feel like it most likely will be, but maybe it won't be. But if that is going to be the case, it makes you wonder, when did he find out that Layla was the daughter of one of his victims? Could it be a situation of he didn't know that until after they got together, or was this part of like Khonshu pushed him towards this, and eventually, despite what he did, maybe it was a means to an end getting close to her, but maybe he eventually fell for her, and now it is a thing of, I am trying to protect you, not only from Khonshu, but also me, because I'm not the man you thought I was. He believes himself to be a monster, and I think that's probably going to make this whole Steven thing that much more complicated, because once again, he is everything you're not. He is kind of a clean slate. He is this bumbling idiot, but he is pure of heart. He isn't, but even Steven still recognizes it doesn't matter. I still have the blood on my hands because of what you did. Because Steven's under the impression like, no, this is my body. But Mark hasn't really broken the news to him like, no, this is my body. You are the other. I'm not the other. You are the other in this body. I'm the main persona. But I like that they, once again, kind of piecing the map, the cloths from Sinfu's sarcophagus together to kind of be almost like a road map. And it's like, oh, it's supposed to match the star constellations. There's a constellation here, but it doesn't match the sky currently. This is from like 2,000 years ago, and yes, the stars move, so... And I love that line. Immediately, I thought was interesting where Khonshu was like, I remember every night. And I was like, well, you're the god of the moon, so I guess it would make sense. I was like, well, I thought, like, how would that help you in this instance? And so Khonshu going through Steven ends up rewinding the sky. And it's not like, oh man, just he saw that. It's like, no, Layla saw it. Everyone in the city saw it. Like, probably around... I'd assume that was around the world, too. It's like, man, some strange phenomena has been going on the past couple of days. So, just the fact is, like, but I thought that was so beautifully done and represented and stunning. Of just, like, right, rewinding the skies. I'm like, that's amazing. But also goes back to the point I made before. I'm curious, what is the limitations on what Khonshu can do? Just probably... once again, I guess, to be fair, they also answered it last episode. He needs an avatar, like... I think the gods themselves are prevented from directly interfering in this. Well, they can, obviously, but it probably takes a lot more power and concentration. So they use an avatar where they kind of have a physical foothold in this realm. But being able to rewind the sky like that, but the other gods were like, right, we warned you, and they imprisoned him. And I love that he's like, right, when they imprison me, Steven, you need to tell Mark to come free me. And it's like... I don't know if Mark would be too keen about that, but it's like a thing of, right, if they want to stop Arthur, they're going to have to. But he ends up getting imprisoned, and the fact is, what does that do to someone like Mark and Steven, considering he resurrected Mark's dead body? So without Khonshu around, like, what does that do to him? Like, does that strip you of everything? Because I'm assuming you won't be able to summon the suit and stuff, because basically their connection's been... severed. I mean, you would think if it was severed completely, he'd be dead, but who knows? So, there's that. Then you have Arthur showing up to talk to Khonshu about, right, your torture, what you put me through, forged me into who I am right now. So your way of doing things has basically been your own undoing. So I want you to sit back and watch what you're tormenting it for. You want to look at me as this bad guy. Like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be who I am. Your abuse of what you put me through, your way of doing things, but it set me on my path to realize your way of doing things wasn't enough. I'm going to go even further than I'm going to go where you couldn't. You, once again, always show up after the fact, after evil has been done. With Amit, I'm going to uproot evil, and make this a better world. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where we pick up with Mark and Steven. Like, are we going to be in some kind of mindscape in their minds, or when they just automatically wake up and it's like, oh, what happened, and they're just going to be without the suit and their powers? Or, and how would you go about rescuing Khonshu? And if you did do that, wouldn't you be basically gaining the wrath of all the other gods? I guess all that does, at least with Arthur, the whole correlation of stepping on the glass and everything, I guess that correlates with, once again, it's kind of like a mind over matter thing, that whatever suffering I have to put the world through, whatever suffering I have to go through, is nothing for the greater good. It's maybe to counteract all the pain and suffering that Khonshu put him through, and the torment that, once again, forged him into who he is, so... Either way, I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.